Hi, my name is Antonis and I'm the painter of this video. Today I want to share with you my process in painting this icon of Christ, originally painted by an Italian painter of the Trecento of the 14th century, Lorenzo Monaco. So for the next hour and some minutes, stay with me if you would like to listen to me talking on this process and how I approach this beautiful face painted by Master Lorenzo Monaco. I hope you are well. Welcome to this channel, and as you see, I have already started painting the underpainting. But first, let me explain how I got into this point. So the first thing I do is find the image, the painting that I would like to study. In this case, the face painted by Lorenzo Monaco. And then I will print this on paper. After I have a hard copy on my hands, I will copy the painting, the image on the paper, by using a method that I call compass method. I have a video where I explain this process on my video list. And if you are interested to know more about how to draw something from a hard copy, a paper print, then feel free to explore this video on my channel. So I draw the image I want to study, and then I apply some red iron oxide on the back of my drawing. The colors that I use are in the form of powder, so I will rub some powder on the back of my paper. I will smear the pigment on the back of my paper, and I will use the drawing, that paper, as a transferring paper. Then I will mount the transferring paper on my board, and I will redraw again. This way, the drawing I've drawn on my paper will be transferred on my board. I hope this makes sense to you, and I want to talk a little bit about the white surface that you see here. As you understand, I will paint with egg tempera as my medium. That's why I primed my board with a gesso, as we call this, that consists of calcium carbonate or chalk, and the binder for this is rabbit skin glue. I have another video on my video list where I explain the process, and I've tried to simplify it as much as I can in terms of the recipe that I use for my gesso, and this recipe creates a wonderful surface for the painter to work with egg tempera. After I have primed my gesso, of course I will use a sandpaper to make it smoother, as smooth as I like. And after the board is ready, I will start by the method of transferring my drawing, as I said before. Now, immediately after I transfer my drawing, I will, here in this case, I will work on the background. Here I paint the background a very neutral ochre yellowish color. This will resemble a little bit the golden decorations of the icon of Lorenzo Monaco. It doesn't really matter to me. I didn't want to spend any gold leaves here, since this is just a study for you to understand and possibly enjoy. And after I've painted my background, as you see here, I will make a very quick, very sloppy, let's say, or not very careful underpainting, where with just using black color, thin black color with egg tempera, I will try to understand where the shadows are on the prototype painting of the face of Christ, where the lights are, and just by the use of black and white, almost as if I was working in watercolors, I will make this black and white underdrawing. Of course, I'm just applying black color where in some areas it's thinner, in some other areas it's thicker, and it will give me a pretty good idea of how this whole thing will proceed. I'm not really very careful. Well, I try to understand what's going on my prototype, on my reference photograph when I'm doing the underpainting, but I am not in a very careful mood of painting right now at this stage. And after I'm feeling good about my underpainting, I will proceed with covering my flesh area with this greenish color that you see here. In iconography, in Byzantine iconography, we call it Proplasmos. Proplasmos is every color we apply as a base color, and Proplasmos will accept both shadows and lights. First we paint the shadows and then the lights. As you see on the flesh area, in both iconography and this face, this study that I'm doing here, Proplasmos is a little bit greenish, brown greenish, and the Proplasmos in the area of the hair is a brownish red. When I paint my Proplasmos, let's say for working on a Byzantine icon, I will normally create a color on my palette that is a little bit darker than what you see here, since in the Byzantine tradition Proplasmos is mainly darker, thus creating a feeling of spirituality, a feeling of some mysterious beauty. Here, the Lorenzo Monaco is an Italian artist of the early Renaissance, and he already began exploring naturalism a little bit more, where the proplasmi are a little bit lighter. So after I draw my Proplasmo, as you see here, using colors like titanium white, cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, and a little bit of cobalt blue, and of course some ivory black. I will then proceed with painting the features of the face, the γραψίματα, as we call it in the Byzantine tradition, where I will define the facial features as the nose, eyes, and the shadowier areas, like the beard of Christ, etc. For this color, I will use some part of my greenish Proplasmo of the face, and also a little bit of black, ivory black, and some red. Just make sure it's slightly darker than your Proplasmos, and also slightly more red. little by little, without any rush, I will try to paint these features and give some substance to the face of Christ. Now, as you see here, the Proplasmos, the greenish Proplasmos, is pretty transparent, pretty, you can say, sloppy, but that's okay, I believe, because I will cover the whole thing gradually through the process of painting layer upon layer of tempera. Everything will be covered in some color or another. So what you see here as sloppy brush strokes will be not you will not be able to see it by the end of the process. But why not cover the Proplasmos directly, completely, with an opaque layer of color? This is just because we desire this transparency in some ways that sometimes are not obvious. This transparency is evident and adds one more layer of beauty to our painting. If you like, you can completely cover your face with the greenish Proplasmon. Another advantage of this transparent layer is that it allows me to see the black and white underpainting beneath. So I know where to draw now my eyes, the eyes of Christ. I know where to draw the nose, the mustache, etc. If I had completely painted the Proplasmo with an opaque greenish color, then I would have to first scratch the features with the needle of a compass, and thus being able to find these features later on when I cover my face with Proplasmo. After as you see here, I have painted my features, and after that I will use an in-between color between the greenish Proplasmo and the brownish darker color of the shadows, and with that color I will smoothen a little bit these features. I will smoothen the harsh brush strokes that I've used for this as much as I can and as much as I see the original painting to be. I think that this step here is very, very important, and if you are interested in exploring this technique of the early Renaissance, it's good to apply some time, to spend some time on this process. Don't be in a hurry to proceed with lighting the face, but rather spend some time, as much as you can, to smoothen and paint very carefully these darker features of the face and the shadows. I really enjoy painting these studies on the Italian masters of the Trecento of the 14th century or the 13th century, just because they are so much influenced by the Byzantine tradition. It's those artists who gradually led to the Renaissance, to the High Renaissance. But to me, it's very interesting how many of these artists had studied the techniques of the Byzantine masters, and they used exactly the same process as them, with the use of Proplasmos, the darker grapsimata, and as now on this video, the photismata, the lighting using a lighter in-tone color to show the lights on the face. So we can see how this Byzantine tradition doesn't stop abruptly, but it has a continuation that is different in, say, Crete, it's different in Italy, it's different in other geographical places, but especially in Italy is so interesting how Giotto, who was familiar with the Byzantine tradition and other painters before Giotto, how they stepped on this tradition to innovate it in their way um, as they thought to be nice, and how this tradition that is not naturalistic at all gradually did lead to the Renaissance and to looking again reality to paint. If you can hear, this is the bell of the clock. I'm not sure if you can hear it. It's there is a beautiful clock in the village I live in Crete, and it rings 12 o'clock. So here, as you see, I have prepared on my palette a color that is consists of titanium white, a little bit of cadmium red, and just a tiny little bit of cadmium yellow, along with a little bit of yellow ochre. I want this color to be pinkish, as you see, and as I apply it, I also use a lot of egg tempera to thin it down on the areas, as you see here, that is a little bit I want it to be more gradient. So I use on my palette both a very dense, not very, but dense enough puddle of color, and at the same time I also use a thinner version of this color. When I say thinner, I mean that I add some more drops of egg tempera solution in this, and I try directly as I paint to give a feeling of volume, of understanding where these shapes of light are more blended with the greenish Proplasmos, and where they end more abruptly, like in the left part of the nose or just above the eyebrow. But I want to talk at this point a little bit about my palette, how I use egg tempera. What I do is I have a flat piece of glass on a table right next to me where I keep my dry pigments on the table on that glass, and I will use my brush to pick some pigment. The powdered pigment will stick on the tip of my brush. This is how I quickly select colors, and then I will smear these colors on my glass palette, where I will apply some drops of egg tempera solution, and thus I will make color. This color usually blends very nice. It's diluted very nice on the glass. Sometimes I will need to use a little spatula to break some powdered pigment that is not broken. It's very important to understand the power of egg tempera, the power of transparencies, the power of using Hi, I'm Antonis, and I'm proud to present you my online course in iconography, Paint an Icon with Me. This course will help you become a better iconographer, and it will help you be more confident when talking and presenting your artwork. It will make you understand in depth the studio practices of a professional iconographer like me, and you will get accustomed to what great iconography looks like. So learn in a simple and organized way everything you need about the materials, mediums, and techniques in order to make a beautiful icon. Paint with me the icon of Christ and learn how to paint better any icon you wish. I will see you at the studio. Spectrum of transparencies. You can use one color and dilute it as much as to create very thin and very subtle changes that will help you paint. This is a matter of understanding your egg tempera material, and the more you paint, the more you are into egg tempera, the more you will understand how this behaves, and you will take advantage of the properties of egg tempera. So here, as you see, the light in these areas, I use a color that is more opaque, not very opaque, just opaque enough. But then at the same time I will have on my glass the same color that is more thin, and with this I will work. Here a speed up of the neck, the area of the neck. And as I complete with placing some lights on my Proplasmos, I will also at the same time try to understand these shapes, if they are applied correctly. I will try to imagine how my painting will be by the end of it, and if this will correspond to the original painting that I studied. Here, as you see, I have prepared another color on my palette, just a little bit darker than the first light that I used. This color has a little bit more of my greenish Proplasmos, but also it's a little bit warmer again. And with this I will try to make this blending from the light to the shadows a little bit more smooth, a little bit more nice. Here try to understand that I don't have a specific process. I have a goal, of course, and this goal is that drives me to continue and guess what my next step will be. So now at this point I understand that I have to lighten up a little bit the face, spread a little bit more the lights on the face towards the edges of the greenish Proplasmos, and I also want to understand what if the colors that I must use should be warmer or colder, more greenish, more bluish, more reddish. Don't freak out at this point if your painting looks bad. It's really necessary because the step we will use many steps, and every time our painting will look better and better. When we use egg tempera, it's inevitable that some of our brush strokes will be evident. This is not oil, the medium is not oil where we can perfectly blend one color into the other, but this can function as an advantage to us because these brush strokes are very charming, and they create a beautiful, fresh image that looks so charming. So feel free to not try to completely hide these brush strokes, but it's like a hatch work. They are nice, and little by little try to smoothen things, but without having the same preoccupation as if you worked in oil or wanted to paint something very naturalistic. Here this color that I use is a little bit darker than the first light that was pinkish. It's darker, and it consists of that same first light. I have added a little bit of cadmium yellow and a little bit of cobalt blue. I want this to be more greenish and also darker in value. And this way, this will, it's a color that is relative to the greenish of the Proplasmos at the beginning. And with this color, I will add one more layer, as you see, of color in order to blend this first light with the areas that need to be blended. You will see on this video, and this is going to be a big video, so thank you so much for being here still. Thank you for following me and trying to understand what I'm saying. And it's very nice. I'm always happy when people tell me that, yes, I watched your whole video and I learned so much. This is a very nice feeling for me, so thank you so much. As you will see, you will see me painting many layers, one upon the other. There will be areas on this painting where the layers will be so many. So that's nice. It's part of painting with tempera, and it also creates a very beautiful texture by the end of the painting, where it is shining and beautiful. Something that I've never seen when painting with oil, where it becomes, oil tends to become more dull if you don't varnish the painting at the end. In egg tempera, it's the opposite. It's so shiny and beautiful, and you just want to go closer to it, smell it. It doesn't smell bad. I find the smell of dry egg tempera very nice. And it's interesting how this medium can accept so many layers without any fear of having issues. There are cases where we can have problems by adding a layer upon another, and this is where we don't wait for the layers to completely dry, the underneath layers to completely dry. For this painting here, I sat before my easel 3 times, and this was good because although the layers of tempera dry, I believe that after a certain number of layers, we need to give it a rest, to give the painting a rest for a day or two, and then continue with our painting. This way the pigments will dry a little bit better and deeper on our painting. They will become more stable, and they will be ready to accept even more layers of color. At this point though, on the video, I'm still on my first sitting before the easel, and as you see, it can accept pretty well the painting. Try also to notice how I don't insist on an area where when I paint I will apply the color, smear it a little bit with my brush, which is very soft and very suitable for egg tempera, like a sable Kolinsky brush. And as you see, I will move around my painting in a way that will permit for the pigment to dry a little bit before revisiting the area and paint some more. Now here I want to establish the lights even more, and at the same time I want to further blend, make it even more smooth. I will go back and forth on these colors between my Proplasmos and my first light, and little by little, with very transparent sometimes layers, as the one here you see, where I add a little bit of reddish, more warm colors. It's one more layer of very, very thin, transparent red color. I will very softly touch, as you see, the surface of the painting with my brush. It's almost, I will not apply any pressure, just as if I softly caress the image, and little by little I will build the volume, and I will apply these colors. Try to understand what you do when you do this process. Try to understand what you paint now. Sometimes we forget what we do and we just paint randomly. It's good to know that and tell yourself that all right, now I'm painting this, now I'm painting this. It's good to know, and this will help you if you know what's going on your palette, what you have on your palette. On egg tempera, our glass palette, when we paint with egg tempera, tends to fill up very quickly and of course dry, but the palette, the glass, tends to be full of colors, and sometimes this is a little bit confusing, and we need to know where what color we use and where we are. So now a couple of days have passed, and this first layer is completely rest. It's more dry, and it can again, I believe, accept color without the risk of being destroyed. I believe I could finish the painting in one sitting in terms of safety. It could be safe, but now I can feel that it is even safer. And as you see, I've created on my palette again the color of the first light. You don't see me here painting it, but I want to have that color on my palette. And one more lighter color, as you see here, that here it almost looks white, but it's not, it's definitely is not white. It's more lighter than, it's lighter than the first light, so I've used titanium white again with a little bit less of cadmium red, and I don't believe I've used any yellow ochre at all. This is just titanium white with a little bit of cadmium red, and if you like, you can apply, you can add just a tiny little bit of this cadmium yellow or ochre, but just a little bit. I want, the more I go lighter, the less yellowish colors to add. So here again, as you see, I will light the areas that I see they need to be more light. I will apply these colors very gently and as exploring what's going on. Thank you so much for being here so far. If you like this channel, feel free to share it, feel free to subscribe, and I also have a Patreon page on patreon.com where you can support the production of these videos, support me and my channel, and be a Patreon of of my art. But anyway, I want to thank you so much for being here, watching the videos, and sharing with me your progress and your experience with egg tempera and working, studying these old masters. So, as you know, for egg tempera, we use powdered pigments. There is another video I have on my video list where you can watch the pigments that I use. I don't use many pigments. It's just titanium white, ivory black, cadmium red, iron oxide red. cadmium yellow and the cobalt blue. These are the basics. I don't even have, in this case as well, I don't even have a special green to paint. I just will mix blue with yellow, and I will get my green. It's good to have one green, but we don't have to have so many colors on our palette that will confuse us always, and I think our life will be easier to have less colors. It's up to the painter, of course. Now here you see again me blending this light that I used before. Let's call this light our second light. And after it's a little bit dry, as you see now, I will apply a color that is in between this second light and the light before that. I will make sure that this color is very, very transparent, and I want to make things a little bit more rich visually, so I will apply some of this blending color above the second light. I know this might doesn't make sense to many of you, but I believe we need to build light little by little in a way that looks organic, looks nice. It doesn't look wooden or false. And also in a way that is visually interesting and rich. This also happens in iconography. I often see students who apply their lights on a face in a way that it looks so dry, so lifeless, so I don't know, as if it has been painted by a robot. Yes, it might be perfect, the blending might have been really perfect, but the visual result is not interesting. Somehow you'll have to paint in a way that makes sense and is also visually very interesting, dense. There are transparencies. There are somebody who look at your painting can see that you have spent some time before your painting, that you have spent some time, and it's not that you just applied some colors, you blended them, and that's it. Getting into this stage, this being so progressed in painting, where you understand this concept, it takes time and it takes really effort. You must spend time, and if you are young, on your early stage in life, you are lucky for many reasons, and one of them is that it's going to be so more easy for you to grasp onto these concepts, and with a little practice to understand them and understand how materials behave, understand and become fastly better. For us who are a little bit older in age, but young in mentality, I believe, it's gonna be a little bit harder, and I see this when I am trying to learn something new, I'm trying to understand something new. It requires so much more effort, but I believe that's the beauty of it. At this point, I really am not interested in becoming a master in anything. I just want to enjoy what I paint. I want other people to enjoy probably what I paint, but in a very quiet, subtle way. Anyway, I don't know what I'm talking about. But yes, to understand in deeper levels egg tempera or oil, whatever medium you use, it does require a lot of work. Whether you are young or old, it does require you to sit and work much. And I have to say at this point that many people me included, is sometimes hard to see it. We have to force ourselves. Painters, many painters I know, and as I said, me included, sometimes we have to drag ourselves into the studio to and start painting. After it's like going to the gym. When you before you go to the gym, we I try to find excuses. It's cold, is I'm tired, I have no time, I don't know what I'm doing there, I know nobody there, etc. It's very similar with the studio. I often try to find excuses that and the same excuses. It's cold, or I'm tired, or it's better to stay online and surf pointlessly. I don't know. But as soon as I get into the studio and sit on my chair and start painting, then things become easier, things become really creative, things become challenging, things become very, very worthy to go and paint. I want to say with this that don't think that all painters are very excited to get into their studio to paint, and they have the time of their life in the studio. It's really, really sometimes can be really harsh, and many painters are challenged to get into their studio. It's an effort, like all nice things in life. It's an effort to start painting for many of us, but as I said, as soon as you sit on the chair, things are getting to be very exciting and nice. You can write me below on the comments what if it's easy for you to be in the studio, or if you how you make time to be in the studio. That's another interesting topic. And if you have the time of your life when you are painting. It seems that painting for me has become part of my core, although I've not always painted in large quantities, or there have been periods in my life where I completely abandoned painting for some reasons. But it seems that painting has become part of my core, and yeah, I'm so thankful for having this gift, as you should also be thankful. We are really, really blessed to be able to paint. Now, as you see, I'm applying some very, very thin glazes of color that will add some warmth on the face of Christ. At the same time, I will make sure that these glazes will further blend the image, the painting, and will add more of this visual richness that I said before that needs to be on the painting. Actually, now that I see this on the video, it does look very, very nice, I would say, even if the blending, even if you can still see the hatches of the brush strokes, etc. This doesn't bother me at all. It's something that I see on my reference image as well. I can see some of the brush strokes by Lorenzo Monaco, and it really does add to the beauty of the final painting. Of course, here I have to say that contemporary artists live a very, very different life than those masters of the past, and it's gonna be really impossible to paint like them, exactly like them, or to claim that we have the exactly same technique. What you see here is me giving you my interpretation of these techniques of the work by those artists, And as I am a different person than the painter of the original painting, I will use different ways to paint this. I'm not sure if what I do is very close or far from what Lorenzo Monaco did here, but it's the best interpretation that I can do. So now that I've brought this face in some stage that I like, I find charming, I will add a little bit of some darker shadows on the areas that are darker. Always try to, when you study something, always try to see what is the darkest areas on the study that you will do on your reference painting, and what are your lighter areas, and try to see how you will achieve the same darkness in value and the same lights. Also try to ask yourselves, should I go lighter? Is it too much? Does it need something more? Ask this when you paint something. You have to have this practical inner dialogue that will help you and will not disrupt you. We often paint or we draw, and what we say is we use a negative language for our work. How disappointing this is, how this doesn't look like our reference. We tend to be very harsh with ourselves and our work. But instead of that, I would say um, it's better to use a practical language. Ask ourselves how greenish this area is, how pinkish or reddish this area is. Is this so dark? Is this shape as light as I see it? How try to predict what will happen when you add your next layer of painting. Try to always do comparisons in shapes, lights, shadows between what you see and what you paint. This way you will not fail into uh, talking negatively about your work. Try to find pleasure, and this is our goal, to find pleasure in painting. Even if it's a study and without any, say, personal expression. Some people they say that there is no personal expression. I definitely express myself and enjoy myself when I'm painting these studies, and so try to enjoy yourself, have fun, and feel blessed of being able to do this. As I said, at this point, I have no specific uh, technique or process. I will try to see my reference and I will try to guess what this adds. For example, I don't know if Lorenzo Monaco painted this darker eyebrows and darker shadows at this point of his painting. Maybe he proceeded with painting these shadows at the early stages of the face. That's fine. I wasn't there. I don't know how he did it, and it's not that interests me. I will try to guess what he did and paint something that will look as close to his work as possible. Here I will add a little bit of shadows on the hair just to explore the drawing of the hair and to better understand later on where I will apply my lights on the hair. Little by little I will draw carefully these hairs on the beard. This is something that my reference will command me to do. And the reason that it's nice for us, the students, to do this study is to do studies in general on the work of older masters is first to see what we can learn and to get accustomed into good painting. Good, our eye will get accustomed to looking good painting, and even when we later will paint our own personal works, personal paintings, then we will be accustomed into painting them in the same rich, nice, beautiful way. Now this is the third sitting that I'm doing here on this painting, and now the underneath layers that are many, you can see how tempera shines when I approach with my stick, and now the underneath layers are dry, so I can apply a little bit more of light. I will do the same thing. I will add a color that looks brighter and more pinkish. And as you see, I also have a very thin down color, a very thin pinkish color on my palette. And with this, I will glaze over some of the underneath layers, and this will add, as you see, so much beauty. On the areas that are lighter in tone, the color I use is more opaque, it's not as transparent. But the more I go towards the edge of these lighter areas, I want the underneath layers to be visible, to be seen. That's why I add more egg tempera solution liquid on my palette, and it will make these colors to be more transparent. Now, one of the challenges that many students get is that often students apply too much light and large areas of light on faces. Even it is a very naturalistic face, a realistic face, even if you paint a friend of yours or something or someone, I noticed that we tend to overlight the faces, to use very bright colors, and very often this is not the case. So make sure that when you apply these lighter colors, you don't overdo it, and that these light colors make sense. There is a reason for them to be. Here, for example, when I applied these colors, I was doubting about this step, as it seemed to me very bright, and of course in the video it seems even more. But I believe by the end it did make sense, and it still wasn't as bright as to destroy the painting and making no sense. And as you see, I want to say something more. There is a lot of handling these very transparent layers. Make sure that you don't have in your mind a very specific let's say way of painting, step 1, step 2, step 3. Here, when you paint this, also in iconography, try to keep your eyes open, try to have this inner dialogue and ask yourself, what does my reference require me to do now? What do I have to do now? Keep your eyes open and avoid having steps on your while you paint. This will create this visual richness and beauty on your painting. And of course, for me as a, let's say, teacher here, it's hard to explain what I'm doing because it's very intuitive. It's very up to what I see when I'm painting. I don't have a step-by-step guide to give you here. I can just tell you that I have my eyes open to observe my reference and see how to how to paint these beautiful transparencies, how to paint these beautiful transitions between warmer colors to greener colors, and thus create something that looks a little bit like my reference. For those of you who are not asleep yet, congratulations and thank you so much for being here. Little by little, though, this face does come to its finish. More glazes and more glazes, and transparency upon transparency, and little by little this comes into a nice face, thanks to the maestro Lorenzo Monaco. If you are new to egg tempera, try to explore a little bit this medium. I know maybe it's sometimes hard for you to find the powdered pigments that are required, but try the medium if you can. It's very satisfying. You will find one more video on my list on how to prepare the egg tempera solution. It requires 1 part of yolk and 1 part of water with some drops of vinegar, and this is the solution with which you will liquefy your powdered pigments and paint with it. Now, if you absolutely have no access to these dried pigments, I believe you will have some access to eggs with one way or another, but you might have no access to dried pigments. Then you can use acrylics. They are very similar to egg tempera, not as satisfying to work with, not as silky to work with, but definitely they dry as quickly as egg tempera dries, and they definitely can give this feeling of the egg tempera. Make sure, since we use a lot of thin layers and glazes here, make sure that you'll have along with your pigments some medium that will intensify the colors as you thin them down. If you just thin acrylics with water, then acrylics will lose their brightness, and the binder that will keep them on the board, that will keep them together. So make sure when you thin acrylics down that you also will add some binder, some medium that you can buy to give the acrylics their power. And as I always say to my students, truly do not be afraid to paint something, no matter how difficult it might seem or ambitious it might seem to you. Don't be afraid to experiment. You will get a lot of pleasure, and almost all of my students tell me how much they enjoy working, painting after some master and doing these studies. I'm also excited that I have some online students where I teach them once every 2 weeks. So there are some some vacancies on my schedule. If you are interested in some one-to-one online with camera lessons, let me know. There is my email on the description of the video below. So now that the face is has come to a nice, beautiful stage that I find it's okay to just leave it relax and finally leave it to be, I will proceed with painting the hair of Christ. So here I have created again in the way that my reference commands a color that is lighter, much lighter than my Proplasmos of the hair. It's an orangey, a warm, beautiful color that consists of cadmium yellow, some yellow ochre, and a little bit of red. Some iron oxide red and a little bit of cadmium red, but as you see, this mainly an orangey color, and that is not absolutely opaque. It is a little bit transparent, and this will allow me to quickly create these subtle shifts in tone in the hair, and with this I will paint my first layer of say light on the head of Christ. I will use this big larger brush stroke, this larger brush. This brush is an acrylic brush with plastic hairs, but it will allow me to cover larger areas quicker, and I will spend some time on this first light of the hair. I will take my time, and before moving on to my second light. Now I will take a smaller brush, a Kolinsky brush, and with that same color I will re-establish the lighter areas of the hair. What I do now is, again, I use the same color, maybe a little bit more opaque than before or less diluted than before, and with this I establish the first light before proceeding, as you see now, on painting the second light, which is more distinct hairs on the head of Christ. And I will make sure that I will be as careful as I see Lorenzo Monaco was. Of course, I wish I was as precise and careful and spontaneous and fresh and masterful as he was. But as I said, okay, I have a different nervous system than him. That's how I justify me being, not as great as him. But anyway, I understand that he has applied the second layer of lighter hairs here. For this I use on my palette some part of the first light along with a great amount of titanium white and cadmium yellow. Here I try to paint this second layer hair by hair. I believe at some point, as you see also, it started feeling a little bit dry, a little bit not very natural, in the same way that the painting on my reference looked. So at some point I just tried to make it a little bit more natural by adding some diluted, some thinned down color, as you see here, and trying to paint more freely a little bit and see if this will give me a more natural look on the hair, a look that resembles more to that of my reference. And it pretty much did. So I understood from this step that sometimes it's good to mix things up, to blend things and use transparencies a little bit more. This will give us a less dry, let's say, in quotes, a less dry image of what we do, and more organic, more natural, more beautiful. This is, as I said before, something I often see. Many times students are taking, are very careful to paint what they see in a precise way, but this leads them to paint something that looks very wooden, very stiff, very much different than the original one. And that's where a teacher might be handy, someone they trust to tell them what to look after, what to take care, and this will save them time. Yeah. So as you see, little by little, this becomes nice. I really don't know exactly what I'm doing here at this point when I'm painting the hair. It's very common for us painters, as you know, to don't know what you do sometimes. That's okay, and it often brings something good. Sometimes it can bring a disaster, but it's okay to not know what we paint. Sometimes we have to get accustomed to this feeling. It's part of being a painter. We definitely shouldn't know what we paint. Always, it's good to paint into the unknown. So welcome this feeling of uneasiness, and it probably means you are on a good path. It struck me very interesting how the whole painting was completely changed when I painted the hair. The more I see the hair, the more I was completing the hair of Christ, the more it looked more beautiful, more interesting, and closer to the original painting by Lorenzo Monaco. Um, So again, thank you so much for, if you are still here, really thank you so much. And I really wish you to be creative, have a nice time ahead of you in the studio, exploring materials, exploring old masters, feeling, being part in a community of people who loved these materials and these mediums before you and with you right now. Even if we are alone in the studio, at the same time, we are a community of people exploring painting. Um, we will for sure never explore it as thoroughly as we would like. Painting is an art that can never be learned completely, but it's so satisfying. It's so yeah. So I hope you'll stay in the studio and have a good time, that you will enjoy the products, the creations of your hands. So if you, as I said, if you liked what you saw, please find me on patreon.com painting the light, where you can find my profile there, and you can support my work. If you are interested more in iconography in the Byzantine tradition, I have a full lesson on iconography, how to paint an icon from scratch till the end of the varnish. It's a bunch of 25 videos, and you can find those on teachable.com. I will have a link below in the description of the video, and it's a very thorough explanation of the process of Byzantine iconography. Again, thank you so much. Have a beautiful stay in your studio. Be healthy and creative. I will see you as soon as I can. I will try to be more consistent and produce more. So I will see you again soon with another video. Have a nice day. Bye.